Alright, here we're going to have a lot of fun talking about anti-cancer monoclonal antibodies. Let's just begin with an overview. What is a monoclonal antibody? Well, they're antibodies, of course, and monoclonal means that they come from a specific B cell line of identical B cells. And the point is that these monoclonal antibodies target specific antigens. For example, to trigger apoptosis, or to induce the formation of a MAC complex leading to cell lysis, or they may promote immune system recognition. And the point is to stop whatever the target antigen is doing. Let's say, for example, the antigen itself is a receptor that promotes growth and proliferation. So the monoclonal antibody will bind to this receptor and stop the growth and proliferation. So that's what monoclonal antibodies are in a nutshell. These monoclonal antibodies are used to fight cancer, for example, to stop growth and proliferation, as well as in autoimmunity. Alright, with this introduction, let's begin. Here we have this guy over here. He's in charge of the house over here in this scene. And we see that he likes wearing tuxedos, and he likes to sit down. So he likes to sit down in his tuxedo. That's why people call him the sitting tux guy. Sitting tux guy for Cetuximab. And he likes to sit on fried eggs. We'll call it egg fried for EGFR. This reminds us that Cetuximab targets EGFR, epidermal growth factor receptors. EGFR is responsible for proliferation, so by targeting EGFR, Cetuximab is able to stop this proliferation, and that's why it's used in various cancers. Over here specifically, this guy has an arrow towards his head, his neck, and his colorectum. I don't even know if colorectum is a word. I know colorectal is. Anyway, this reminds us that Cetuximab is used to treat head and neck cancers as well as metastatic colorectal cancers. Now let's talk about adverse effects. The good news is that any monoclonal antibody that ends in Iximab, that is, it has an X, we know it's chimeric. That is, they have non-human components to them, and therefore they're more likely to have hypersensitivity reactions associated with them. So Cetuximab, of course, has an X in it. Cetuximab. In patients, we see rash develop, represented by this hand over here that has a rash on it. We also see that he's balancing the word LFTs on it. This reminds us of the LFTs, the elevated LFTs. Liver function tests. And finally, his incredible diarrhea reminds us of the diarrhea that is seen in patients who take Cetuximab. Okay, now let's move on to the next anti-cancer monoclonal antibody. Here we have this couple over here. Because he has so much trust for her, because she's such a loyal wife, he writes trust on his shirt, and she writes her on her shirt. Trust her. Trust reminds us of Trastuzumab, and her reminds us of HER2. And this reminds us that Trastuzumab targets HER2. And by the way, this shoe over here just reminds us of shoe, that it's her shoe, or HER2. HER2, just like Cetuximab, is responsible for proliferation. And therefore, by targeting HER2, Trastuzumab is able to block proliferation. And that's why Trastuzumab is also able to treat various cancers. What are the cancers that Trastuzumab is able to treat? Well, on their date, they were about to eat some chicken breast, as well as some stomach. They wanted to eat some stomach. Breast reminds us of breast cancer, and the stomach reminds us of gastric cancer. Trastuzumab is able to treat breast cancer, and specifically, of course, HER2 positive breast cancer, as well as gastric cancer. Adverse effects of Trastuzumab include cardiotoxicity, and that's because myocytes are actually HER positive. Patients may develop dilated cardiomyopathy. That's why we have this dilated heart over here. Now the good news is, this dilated cardiomyopathy is often reversible. Then we take a look at this character over here. This is the lamb. A lamb for Alemtuzumab. And he's cracking this CD over here with the 52 on it. Perhaps this CD over here is from 1952. But anyway, CD52 is generally present on all lymphocytes. B cells, T cells, natural killer cells, you name it. And therefore, Alemtuzumab targets, basically, all lymphocytes. That's why it's used in chronic lymphocytic leukemia as well as multiple sclerosis. Now, of course, if we target the immune cells, there's going to be an increased risk of infection and autoimmunity. That's why patients who take Alemtuzumab may develop, for example, ITP, represented by this eye on the teepee behind the lamb. Eye on teepee for ITP. Let's take a look behind this lamb over here. Here we have this guy over here who's basically a bed, and he likes to sing. Perhaps he likes to sing Bevacizumab.
Bevacizumab!
Anyway, bed that sings reminds us of Bevacizumab. Bevacizumab targets VEGF, represented by this guy over here, whose microphone is not a microphone, but a vegetable. Vegetable for VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor. By targeting VEGF, Bevacizumab is able to treat various cancers. What we see on the bed over here, the lungs, as well as the digestive system. Bevacizumab is able to treat various cancers of the lungs, such as non-small cell lung cancer, and cancers of the digestive tract, including renal cell carcinoma and colorectal cancer. The blood over here reminds us of the adverse effect: impaired wound healing, hemorrhage, and blood clots. This happens because, as we mentioned, Bevacizumab targets VEGF. Therefore, there will be impaired angiogenesis, leading to hemorrhage and impaired wound healing. Alright, now let's go onto the roof of this building over here. Here we have this guy in the red tux. Red tux for Rituximab. And he is shooting this CD over here. His old girlfriend Pamela had this CD. She was 20 years old, so she liked to write CD 20 on it. So again, red tux guy shooting this CD that belonged to Pamela. CD that says 20 on it reminds us of CD20. CD20 is found on B cells, so Rituximab is able to target this CD20. That's why it's used to treat non-Hodgkin lymphoma, CLL, rheumatoid arthritis, ITP, TTP, as well as other conditions. The reason why we have Pamela over here is because, amongst other adverse reactions, Rituximab can lead to a reactivation of PML in patients with JC virus. That's why patients with this virus should not take Rituximab. And of course, since Rituximab has an X in it, Iximab, it can lead to hypersensitivity reactions. Alright, let's take a look outside over here, where we see this imp. Imp reminds us of Ipilimumab. We see over here that this imp is trying to scare away the CTLA character over here. CTLA reminds us of CTLA. Perhaps the fact that there are 4 letters over here reminds us of 4. You know what, I'll just write 4 on his shirt over here. So this represents CTLA4. Ipilimumab targets CTLA4. This helps activate the immune system. Now we take a look at this guy over here, and we see that he has some serious skin condition. And that's because Ipilimumab is used especially in melanoma. For example, in a patient who's already had resection of the tumor, and we don't want it to come back. And of course, since we're activating the immune system, patients may develop autoimmunity, represented by this auto in the moon over here that this CTLA4 character is about to run over. So again, Ipilimumab targets CTLA4, it's used in melanomas, and it could lead to autoimmunity. For completeness sake, we'll just mention the monoclonal antibodies that target PD-1, and these are Pembrolizumab, Cemiplimab, and Nivolumab. I like to think PCN for PD-1, PCN, Pembrolizumab, Semolizumab, and Nivolumab. And the last ones that target PD-L1 are Evolumab, Volumab, and Atezolizumab. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this scene on the monoclonal antibodies. Take care.